by this individual. And then if I play it forward, I mean, this is how it moved.
Right. Well, art, the bottom line of art, that's the bottom line of art. You arrange things in an original way, so it looks fresh.
Am I right in thinking that with Newton, he took the existing laws of physics and
which were negligible.
And he proposed
there were no laws of physics before Newton.
And he proposed a question,
mm-hmm.
and then he tested that question and found an answer.
He asked himself a question, how come the Earth goes around the sun? And he came up with an idea that was totally different from what people had thought about before. He came up with calculus. He came up with the inverse square law. So what I'm saying is true creativity comes from almost nothing, and it's like a supernova, while creativity of a robot is imitative. Now, there's nothing wrong with that, because, of course, imitative artwork is still artwork, but it's imitative.
Do you believe people like the big AI CEOs and Elon Musk when they say that AI will lead to new discoveries in science?
That's possible because there's so many laws of physics that are known that many of the new laws of physics are imitative, and you rearrange them and combine them in different ways. So it's possible that the big breakthroughs of the future will be guided by breakthroughs of the past. There's nothing wrong with that.
Are you concerned about AI at all?
I'm concerned about AI in the larger perspective that one day they can learn to do things that are bad, learn to kill, learn to maim, to harm people. Realize that every invention that we've made in the past, like the bow and arrow, could be used for good and bad. Everything, okay? The bow and arrow could be good for game, for food, for eating, but a bow and arrow could be good for slaughtering your next door neighbor. Any new invention has a sword to it. And so I think that so far, most of the applications of artificial intelligence have been positive. We're talking about labor costs. We're talking about creating wealth. We're talking about making things faster, cheaper, better. That's all great. But you can also create artificial intelligent weapons as well. And the battlefield is where it's happening. And if you take a look at what's happening in the Ukraine and Russia, already we're talking about aerial weapons that can use wires to lock onto their target. Mm-hmm. And they use artificial intelligence to guide them with this wire. And they cannot be stopped using the usual techniques.
For every founder, there comes a point in building a company where your job shifts. From being the person inside your business, actioning everything, to the person responsible for absolutely everything. The only way I've been able to make this shift across the different companies and teams I'm responsible for is by knowing that the right systems are in place to manage everything. Systems that don't need me in order for them to work. Our sponsor Pipedrive is one of those systems. An easy to use, intelligent CRM tool for growing sales teams. My teams use it and have for the last decade because it's genuinely the most effective way to run a sales operation. Through one dashboard, you get every deal visible and every stage of the sales process is clear. And what needs to happen next is all there in real time. When a system like this works, you don't need to be in every conversation to know exactly if your business is moving forward, where and what the blockers are. Over 100,000 companies are already running their sales on it. So if you'd like to join them, sign up at pipedrive.com/CEO, where you'll get an exclusive 30-day free trial instead of the usual 14 days. No credit card is needed. That's pipedrive.com/CEO. Much of the reason most people haven't posted content or built their personal brand is because it's hard and it's time consuming and we're all very, very busy. And if you've never posted something before, there's so many factors in your psychology that stop you wanting to post. What people think of you. Am I doing this right? Is the thing I'm saying absolutely stupid? All of these result in paralysis, which means you don't post and your feed goes bare. I'm an investor in a company called Stan Store, which you've probably heard me talk about. And what they've been building is this new tool called Stanley that uses AI, looks at your feed, looks at your tone of voice, looks at your history, looks at your best performing posts and tells you what you should post, makes those posts for you. You can also just use it for inspiration. And sometimes what we need when we're thinking about doing a post for our social media channels is inspiration. Building an audience has fundamentally changed my life. And I think it could change yours too. So I'm inviting you to give this new tool a shot and let me know what you think. All you have to do is search coach.stan.store now to get started. Going back to this question of the Big Bang and where we all came from, if you had to posit a guess as to Big Bang, would you land on this bubble bath theory that you talked about, where there's just lots and lots of universes, some of them are contracting and expanding. Is that where you would personally land?
Probably. If you take a look at empty space, we now believe that empty space is frothing with little bubbles that pop into existence and then annihilate and go back into nothingness again. So even pure nothingness is chock full activity. And one day, we think, one of these tiny little bubbles decided not to go back into the vacuum, but to keep on expanding and expanding. That became the Big Bang. And so that theory says that the universe is dynamic and that universes are being created all the time.
What about Adam and Eve and this story?
What about Adam and Eve?
You don't think this story is true, that there was a garden, Adam and Eve, Adam ate the apple, put your clothes on, behave yourself, and then, we all come from there?
Well, I think there's evolution, and evolution did create life forms that are single-celled, multi-celled, and then cells, nervous system like fish, and then fish became land-moving organisms. So I think there's a linear progression.
You don't believe the stories told in the First Testament of the Bible around how humans came to be? God created the world in 7 days. You don't believe that stuff? Presumably.
Well, I think it's a fairy tale. I think it's a very compelling fairy tale. But I think that even the people who teach religion realize that it's a metaphor, that we don't really mean 24 hours in a day, because that deals with the earth. In the universe, there could be other worlds where a day is not 24 hours. A day does not look like what the Bible says in Genesis. So I think it's a way to organize your religion into a way that is digestible and people can understand it. And it touches people, which is the purpose of religion. The purpose of religion is to touch people, to come together into a commonality. And that's what the Genesis does. Religion, in some sense, is a way to help people, to show people guidance, the good life, so that you don't terrorize other people, that you make life better for other people. Not that it explains the meaning of existence, but it gives you a reason for existence.
And you would consider yourself to be an atheist?
No, I'm agnostic. I believe that there's a lot of truth because it's a way of behaving. It's a way of learning how to be good to your neighbor. It's a glue that holds things together. Not that it gives meaning for life, but it shows the way.
It shows the way. And the subject of morality is often so intrinsically linked to religion, which is what is good and where does morality come from, Doctor?
Well, I was in the United States Army for 2 years, and at that point, I had to face death, and I had to face war. It was the height of the Vietnam War. There were 500 GIs dying every week. Life magazine published an issue where they had the pictures, just the pictures with no commentary, of all the GIs that died that week. With no commentary, no I told you so, just the pictures that died. And then I realized that I would have to put my life on the line because my number was up. And people were going into the military. And people were realizing, well, war is the way people, work out their differences. But then I began to realize, being in the military, that there is a morality there. I began to realize that the people who were fighting had their own religion. They had their own way of looking at good and evil and whatever, and they were willing to sacrifice their life for their own freedom. I began to question religion at that point. Is it just a glue that holds people together? Is there a deeper meaning to the whole thing? So one day I was learning how to throw hand grenades, and our sergeant, who was explaining to us how to throw a hand grenade, had scars on one side of his face, big scars on his neck. And why? And he said, well, one day a little Vietnamese boy came up to him, and the Vietnamese boy says, candy, you want candy? And the GI says, no, get away from me. I don't want candy. Well, the little boy showed what was in it was a hand grenade. It was not all. And the little boy threw the hand grenade at the sergeant. Well, the sergeant immediately saw what the danger was, and he hit the ground as soon as he could, flat on the ground. The grenade exploded, and one half of his body got saturated with shrapnel. And then you have to ask yourself a question. Why would a young boy do something like this? It's because he believed in something. And I think that was a real big lesson for me. And that is, you have to believe in something. You have to believe in the goodness of men and also the fact that men can do evil. And you have to fight for what you think is right. And therefore, it's not just a question of we're number one, we're going to win this war. I used to sing a song in the morning, I want to go to Vietnam, I want to kill a Charlie Kong. I used to sing that every morning at 4 o'clock in the morning. And then I ask myself now, why? Were we on the right side or the wrong side? And then at that point, you begin to question what is right and what is wrong. And then you realize, maybe I'm on the wrong side.
Maybe I'm on the wrong side. I mean, it goes back to all the conflict happening at the moment because we're ideologically beliefs are, and that's causing against each other and cause so much pain and suffering in the world. Do you think there's any chance that this could all change, or is it part of the human condition?
Well, if you take a look at the human condition, you realize that warfare has been an integral part of our evolution as a species. Even in the animal kingdom, animals will fight against other animals. And so my hope, however, is that we're different from the animals. We have a brain. We can make moral decisions. Animals do not understand the meaning of a moral decision. Animals is survival, is who's stronger, who has the food. We don't necessarily have to engage in that conflict. And so I would hope that we use the brain that we have to think through and create a better world.
One of the things I heard when I was very young about the universe, and I guess this was inspired by some theory within physics, was that there are infinite amounts of worlds out there. And I heard someone say, if the world is infinite, that means that there's someone like me, a Stephen Bartlett, who has an identical life there somewhere out in the stars, who's living an identical life to mine, maybe other than instead of in this cup, there's lemonade instead of coffee. This is what they call, is it called the many worlds theory, where they think there's theoretically...
That is a version of the many worlds theory. But most many worlds theory simply says that there's an infinite number of universes and worlds out there, none of them necessarily identical to ours, but independent of us, that is a distinct possibility.
But if there's infinite numbers, that means there's one just like this, identical to this.
Not necessarily. You can have infinite things that don't repeat. So in other words, You don't necessarily have to have another civilization that is exactly like ours. You could, but it's not necessary if you believe in an infinite universe.
I guess. Do you think that's plausible, that there's an infinite number?
It's possible. When you look at the night sky, you're overwhelmed by the majesty of the night sky, and then you realize that we're nothing but this gigantic disk called the Milky Way galaxy. And if this is the Milky Way galaxy, then here we are thinking that this higher universe, there's nothing but a pinpoint on the Milky Way galaxy. And how many galaxies are there? We're talking about trillions of galaxies that are out there, each one containing roughly 100 billion stars.
How are we supposed to feel about this? I did this star tour a couple of months ago in LA where all it was a guy took me out to a field, the Joshua Tree, at nighttime. And he just explained the way all the stars are. And then I looked through a telescope and he was like, okay, this thing you're seeing here is a galaxy and it's a gazillion miles that way. And this one is a galaxy as big as the Milky Way and it's a zillion miles that way. It made me feel a lot of things. It made me feel, one, irrelevant from a cosmic perspective. It also relieves one's anxiety. If anyone's anxious about this life, you kind of feel like you don't matter that much. But also it can make you feel like it doesn't matter, like there's no point. Because I think there's a human want to think it really, really, really matters. Now, it might matter to us, but does it matter to the universe? Does our lives matter to the universe?
Well, I like this slightly differently. I think on the other side of the Milky Way galaxy, there's an alien who's writing the same equation that I'm writing down right now in different language, in different notations. But he's also discovering string theory. And there are a lot of galaxies out there, each one with an individual saying, gee, I think I discovered something new about the universe. And these laws are universal. The equations that I'm writing down right now are identical in different language with the equations that they're writing down billions of light years from us. And that gives me a sense of oneness. It gives me a sense that, wow, we're part of a fellowship. We're part of a camaraderie. We're on the same quest, a quest to understand the nature of matter and energy. we're on the same boat. Even though we speak different language, even though we're on different sides of the universe, all part of the same club.
Don't you think it's plausible that we're going to destroy ourselves before we ever figure that answer out, or before we get to meet these aliens? Because the technology we've been able to create so far, like nuclear weapons and things like AI, you play this forward just on, you talked about probabilities being the most important thing. The probability that one of these egomaniacs who has the launch codes for a nuclear weapon at some point decides happy or they feel threatened is pretty high if you just extend time. I mean, the probability goes up theoretically with every year that passes, that someone is going to make a mistake that wipes us out. And the more advanced our science, I mean, again, I'm just theorizing, the higher the probability that we create something that can destroy ourselves.
Well, I like to look at it slightly differently. I say it's the smallest unit of history. And I say it's the decade. Anything smaller than a decade, you get random fluctuations, noises, accidents taking place in a decade. But if you look at human history, decade by decade by decade, you realize that, oh my God, just a few decades ago, it was horse and buggy. Before that, we just had plows. Before that, and you begin to realize that we've come a long ways. Not that we hit the end, but we've come just in the decade by decade analysis of the history of the human race.
And we've got closer to being able to destroy ourselves.
That's true too, because before we couldn't destroy. Now, for the first time in human history, we have the potential of destroying ourselves with designer germs, with nuclear, with perhaps artificial intelligence. We didn't have that capability before. And it's only been in the last 80 years or so as a consequence. So I think that, first of all, it means that every decade, tremendous progress is made. There's no doubt about that. But second, we're on a knife's edge. You tilt it the wrong way, and there's world war. You tilt it the other way, and there's food and luxury for everyone. And it's up to us to decide which way the knife will go. But my point is, decade by decade, we see the enormous progress that we humans have made. The next question is, what about the next few decades? That's a big question mark.
Do you think humanity are going to be able to travel out there amongst the stars and become multiplanetary, like someone like Elon Musk is planning?
Well, I think it's for certain that we're going to go not just to the moon, but to Mars, and maybe even beyond that. Maybe not in our lifetime, but our grandchildren's lifetime, we may break through and visit other planets within our solar system. Now, to go beyond that would require some sort of warp drive, because of the fact that the nearest star is probably orbiting Alpha Centauri, which is 4.5 years away from the planet Earth. So you realize it would take hundreds, if not thousands of years to begin the colonization of the nearby star systems.
There should be a button just down below here. And if it says subscribed, you're already subscribed. If it says subscriber, that means you're not yet. And if you're not subscribed, please could you do us a favor and hit that button. It helps the show more than you know. And according to the algorithm, you're someone that watches our show, but you haven't yet hit that button. Thank you so much. If you could answer any one mystery of the universe, I have it down here, the answer. What would you seek to answer?
Well, it's what I'm seeking for my entire life. And that is, we want that one secret of the universe. We have the force equation that's like half an inch long. We have the equation for gravity that's also about half an inch long. So why not the theory of everything, maybe an inch long? We're not there yet. But I think it does exist. And if we were to find it, that would give us an understanding of the entire universe. And I think we're very close.
You think we're close?
I think we're close.
What makes you think we're close?
Because so far, the theories that we do have, almost like magic, you look at the history of the equations of physics, and you realize they get simpler and simpler and simpler with time. You can write down Newton's equation, Maxwell's equations, the equation for the nuclear force on one sheet of paper. One paper. The gravity, we don't have that yet, but we have the other forces, and they're very simple. And that's why I think will also be simple.
One of the things that sometimes inspires me is that when you look at nature, or when you look at something like the human brain, you see the same patterns as you see when you look at stars. And I'm so fascinated by the nature of the human brain because it seems to be so powerful. And it also seems to have patterns we see in the wider universe. Think about this, about the brain and how astonishing it is as a
Well, when I look at the animals, that makes me triply impressed. The fact that animals cannot share in that. See a universe that the animals cannot see. Patterns, we see meaning, we give rhyme and reason to what we see. With animals, it's just, where's my dinner?
I think the brain is as fascinating as the universe is fascinating.
I think the universe is more fascinating. No matter how fast we are with physics and the mathematics of physics, pure mathematics is still more profound.
You wrote this book called The Physics of the Future, How Science Will Shape Human Destiny and Our Daily Lives by the Year 2100. If I was alive in 2100, based on everything you know about physics, what am I likely to see, experience? How is life likely to be different in that future?
Well, I think we'll probably be on the moon, maybe onto Mars, and perhaps even dream about sending the first space probes even beyond that. We're talking about being able to use artificial intelligence to send probes out there. Of course, we're not going to go to the stars. That's a few hundred years into the future. But I think that we will begin to understand the solar system within this century. And this also means that we'll have artificial intelligence, cure for cancer, and maybe one will need the other. Maybe artificial intelligence will help cure cancer and many diseases. And longevity, perhaps we'll begin the process of solving the immortality crisis.
Do you think we will be able to live forever in the near future?
I think there's a possibility that we may have an indefinite lifespan. I think that's a possibility.
And you think it's possible within the laws of, I guess, physics and biology?
Yes. At the end of our chromosomes, every cell, there's something called the telomeres. And the telomeres are like a clock. They get shorter every time a cell reproduces. And when the telomere gets so short, it frays, falls apart, and you die. So we have a time limit. We've also discovered telomerase, a chemical that stops the clock. This was incredible when it was first announced, that if there's a clock in our body called the telomeres that tracks how long we're going to live, and there's something called telomerase which stops the clock, then can we live forever? Well, that was the good news. Then the bad news was we found out that to our shock, cancer also uses telomeres and telomerase to live forever. Why does cancer kill you? Because they are immortal. In principle, they could live forever. And so it means the secret of immortality is tantalizing close. We do know that there are cells that make immortality possible, but there's a price to pay is you don't want cancers to also follow you. So here's the trick of the game. We have a whole bunch of top people in the sciences and medicine looking for ways to extend the human lifespan with the telomeres without wakening up the cancers that make cancer possible.
One of the things you wrote a book about 3 years ago now, in 2023, and that's when it was published, is this thing here.
That's right.
What is this?
This is the future. This is a quantum computer. It's a computer that computes not on transistors, which is old-fashioned. It computes on, think about that. The ultimate object beyond the transistors that you can compute with is the atom. And how do transistors work? Transistors can be up or down, up or down. It's called digital.
Can you demonstrate that on there? And this is your other little...
Yeah, so think of this as a cell. And the cell could either be switched off. If you take a computer and open it up, what do you find? Switches like this. They're called transistors. Transistors that tell you whether it's on or off. Mm-hmm. Now, that's digital. The revolution of today. This is the revolution of tomorrow. Not just up or down, of in between. How many states are there between 0 and 1? In principle, an infinite number of states between 0 and 1. So this is the basis of a digital computer. Mm-hmm. This is the basis of a quantum computer. Quantum computers are so powerful that even the CIA is worried that one day, perhaps in the future, they'll be so powerful, they'll be able to break into any known digital code. So even the CIA is worried about the fact that these could become so powerful that they'll allow you to break into any known computer. So these are called quantum computers. Why are they powerful? Because they compute not on transistors, they compute on atoms. And you can't get much smaller than an atom and have stable matter. But that's what quantum computers can do. And they exist. This is not science fiction. They already exist.
So just to simplify this in a way that I can understand it, normal computers are very, very simple, like this switch. They kind of exist in a linear direction.
Up or down, on or off.
Kind of binary, yes or no.
That's right.
Whereas a quantum computer like this, where information in so many different directions at the same time, so it'd be way more powerful.
Way more powerful
way
than
faster.
up and down.
And I was looking recently, did an announcement actually this year where they basically set a deadline for the cybersecurity world and governments and banks and other tech giants that because they have a computer now that is very, very powerful, they're worried that it will be able to crack a lot of the digital world that we all rely on, including banks, even Bitcoin, which was quite interesting. And they've set as the deadline for everybody to get their shit together. This is a massive threat to things like Bitcoin, which is essentially secured by an equation that they believe quantum computers are going to be able to very easily crack. And if they do that, then everyone's Bitcoin, for example, is at jeopardy. But beyond Bitcoin, what does the world look like in a world where we have these incredible computers?
Well, first of all, who's doing this work? And it turns out is following this work very carefully. Because with this, you'll be able to crack any code. Why is it that a thief cannot steal your bank account today? It's because that thief does not have your digital code. If a thief has your digital code, there goes your life savings out the window. Capitalism would vanish. Society would come to a halt. There'd be civil war. There'd be all sorts of chaos taking place. But codes are there not to be broken. To break a code, you have to have another code. And so the CIA and other organizations create these very complicated codes that you have to master. Quantum computers can do it, but we're not there yet. But it's coming. I don't know when. Some people say in a few decades. Some people say sooner. I don't know. I just know that the world is gambling that we'll find a way to stop quantum computers from breaking into digital computers.
You've been working on physics for the last, 71 years? As a kid, I was reading about how you started making your own atom smasher, I guess you'd call it, a particle collider machine.
That's right. When I was in high school.
That's a very strange for a high school kid to be doing.
Well, I was fascinated by the work of Einstein and the work of people working on subatomic particles. And I got interested in antimatter.
Antimatter.
Antimatter is the opposite of matter. When I combine matter and antimatter, I get a bomb. So you have to be very careful that you don't marry matter with antimatter. And antimatter behaves the opposite of ordinary matter. If ordinary matter goes clockwise in magnetic field, antimatter goes counterclockwise in that same magnetic field. And so as a science project, I wanted to photograph the tracks of antimatter. So I got hundreds of miles of copper wire, built a cloud chamber, and I was able to prove that I could photograph the tracks of antimatter. And for that, I won grand prize at the San Francisco Science Fair, and that began my career. Just before I graduated from high school, I decided to top that by creating an atom smasher, a 2.3 million electron volt betatron particle accelerator. It consumes 6 kilowatts of power. Everything my mother's house had, it would absorb. And that was the goal, to build a machine that would create my own beam of antimatter. So I got started very early, and I said to myself, this is for me. This is what I want to do for a living.
Every time I've tried to improve something in my life, like my businesses, my health, my relationships, I've noticed that the biggest shifts have come from being better informed. And when it comes to our health, most of us know very, very little. So when our team was approached about partnering with Function Health, it felt very much aligned. Their team has developed a way of giving you a full 360-degree view of health, many of the things that are going on in your body in the form of different tests. You do one blood draw, and it gives you access to over 160 lab results. Hormones, heart health, inflammation, stress, toxins, the whole picture. I use it, and so have many of my team members.
You sign up and you schedule your tests, and once you're done, you get a little report like the one I have here. I can see my in-range results, my out-of-range results, and there's a little AI function too. So if I have any questions about my out-of-range results, I can just go in there and ask it any question I want. And these tests are backed by doctors and thousands of hours of research.
It's $365 for a yearly membership. Go to functionhealth.com/DOAC and use the code DOAC25 for $25 off your membership. I've done almost 700 interviews with some of the most interesting people in the world. And one of the things you learn, which is unexpected, is that vulnerability is the doorway to connection. And after sitting here for 2-3 hours with a guest, I feel a deep sense of connection to them. And as they leave, what I get them to do is to write a question in the diary of a CEO. We've taken all of the questions from the diary of a CEO. We have put the question here on this card with the name of the person that wrote it. So you can sit at home, as I do with my fiance and my colleagues at work and other people in my life. Whenever we get a minute, we play the Diary of a CEO conversation cards. And it is incredible what happens. These are great if you're in a romantic relationship and you want to connect your partner more. These are also great if you're in a team and you want to bond your team together. And I have to say, they're also great for families that want to learn more about each other and that need a good excuse to spend some time in a digital world, in the analog environment, connecting human to human. It is remarkable what the right question at the right time can do. Go to thediary.com and you can get these conversation cards right now. Is there anything you discovered through your work in physics that changed your day-to-day behavior and life? How you treat people, how you show up, what you think matters?
No, but the one thing that did change my attitude toward life, other people, was being in the Army. Yeah, that was a game changer that changed everything I knew, or which I thought I knew. Before then, I was single-mindedly focused on physics, just physics, do physics well. That was my life. After seeing warfare up close, I began to realize there's more to life than warfare.
I think I asked this in part because last time I spoke to a physicist and he talked to me about how the nature of reality is not what I think it is, and that there's multiple, dimensions, and that I'm only seeing a fraction of what is real, which I think all physicists agree upon. It sounds a bit like a conspiracy theory or something, but actually, logically, it makes a lot of sense to only see what you need to survive.
That's
and actually,
right. What you see, your conception of the three-dimensional world is only the tiniest sliver of actually exists.
And when I heard that, it made me open-minded to a lot of the things I thought were conspiracy nonsense. It made me open-minded to ghosts. Maybe ghosts are real.
Well, I wouldn't go that far.
Well, maybe another dimension where there's spirits that can see me, but I can't see them.
Well, there could be other such dimensions that's within the realm of possibility.
When we die, do you think that's it? Or do you think there's a possibility that there's ghosts and that our soul goes somewhere?
I don't see it happening because your thoughts are electrical. And when you die, they're off. There's nothing propelling thinking anymore. Thinking requires energy. Even ghosts, if ghosts exist, they would still require a lot of energy to keep the thoughts going. But that's why I don't believe in ghosts, because I don't see an energy source that propels the ghosts.
People talk a lot about spirituality. They talk about, things like chakras, and a lot of spiritual people talk about vibrations. It's a phrase that I often hear in the spiritual communities. Do you believe in anything like that in terms of energies and being able to feel each other's energies?
Well, I think that if a person emanates a certain aura or a vibe, that doesn't necessarily mean they're radiating something.
But is there any physics behind that idea?
I think it's psychological, that you are tuned into a certain personality, a certain way of movement. I think it's psychological rather than physical.
What is something you believe that you haven't proven?
Well, there's a lot of things that haven't been proven. All I can say is maybe, maybe not, like flying saucers. I don't say exist or they exist. I say maybe. I just haven't seen concrete evidence for them, that's all. So there's a lot of things that I can definitely say no, like ghosts. I don't think there are ghosts, but I can't prove it. Maybe there is some afterlife of some sort, but it does go against what is measurable. We've seen no measurement of somebody that's been able to pick up vibrations from a ghost.
How would you like to be remembered someday, long after you're gone? Do you care about being remembered? Do you care about legacy?
Well, I care about leading a good life that I feel comfortable with. Mm-hmm. And if your books and your teachings and your lectures, if they live on beyond you, that's a bonus. It means that you had an impact. It means you touched people. You touch people's ideas. And when I go down the street, quite a few people come up to me and they say, I saw you on this show. I saw your show. And that gives me a nice feeling. Of course, after I'm gone, there's nothing to feel. But when you're still alive, then you've had an impact. knowing that you've changed somebody's life. Several people have come up to me and said, I became a physicist because of you. So that's a nice way to view reality, that you touch people.
Is there anything that you used to think was a conspiracy theory that you now know to be true?
Well, I like it. So as soon as someone says something outlandish, I say to myself, sure.
But that's what I mean. Like you're a debunker. So at some stage in your life, you must have had the experience of thinking something can't be true and proven wrong.
Usually when I make predictions, it's true. Maybe the timeline is a little bit exaggerated, but they turn out to be true. So I haven't made any predictions or observations that were later shown to be false.
What predictions are you making now then about the nature of reality in the future?
Well, I talk about the nature of string theory in the future, whether or not we really will have a theory of everything. Flying saucers, I talk about that even though we have no evidence today, there's a mountain of these things being declassified now. Maybe we'll pick up shreds of evidence.
Did you look at the declassified information that Trump released on UFOs?
Yeah, I've looked at the whole batch, 160 or so sightings.
Was there anything in there that was compelling to you?
No, just lights dancing in the sky without any commentary. So you don't know what they are. It could be extraterrestrial, but you see, these things are two-dimensional. They're taken by a camera, which flattens the image. Therefore, to judge distance is very tricky.
Do you believe that you're looking at extraterrestrial life forms when you watch these videos of UFOs?
I'm open to the idea. I don't think there's any smoking gun yet, but I'm open to the idea that these are extraterrestrial.
You see some of them going up and then down and then into the ocean and coming back up again. When you watch that, do you think these are aliens, or do you just think it's people that have misunderstood what they're looking at?
I leave open the probability that it could be one or the other. There's no aha moment where I say that it's nothing but reflection, it's nothing but an optical illusion. There's no aha moment.
If you had to bet everything you love and cherish on either side of the fence, that non-human life had made contact with the Earth at some point in some form or not, which side would you place everything you love and care about on? Yes, aliens have made contact with this Earth in some form, or no?
Well, I would have to say I don't know.
If you had
I know
to,
it's a cop-out.
No, but if everything was on the line, one would have to move yet to yes or no. Personally, I would probably say no. If you made me, you'd say yes.
But no. Maybe yes. Very important, the word maybe. Scientist, and use that against me by saying, you said on television that this and this is true. Maybe. That doesn't mean it actually is true. It means I open the possibility that it's true.
But if you were held at gunpoint, Doctor, and at gunpoint they said, right, you've got to say yes or no, and if you're right or wrong, that determines your fate. I
would have to say maybe. I know what you're getting at. You want to corner the fox, right?
Yeah, to some degree, yeah. I'm trying to corner the fox. But I'm doing it to understand where your intuition or your bias lands.
There's not enough evidence. There's no aha. I do see a lot of
maybes. Yeah, I mean that's probably the intellectually honest answer is maybe. But if I was forced to fall on one, I'd probably say yes. I see no evidence to say yes, and some sightings of some things. But I'm open-minded. Maybe change. Doctor, we have a closing tradition on this podcast where the last guest leaves a question for the next guest who they're leaving it for. And the question left for you in diary is, what is the best strategy to deal with failure?
I think the best strategy to deal with failure is try it again. I think on the first try, you're bound to make mistakes because it's a learning curve. And that learning curve is instructive. It teaches you. It teaches you to try it again, but make a slight change. Make a slight change and hope that change is in the right direction. If not, make another change in the right direction.
If you could that 7-year-old kid that was just getting into physics, and
8-year-old,
8-year-old, and give him any advice that would best him for the next 70 years, what advice would you have given him?
I'd say carry on. That I feel good about. Decisions that made me a better person. For example, when I went into the Army, at that point I thought, what could be worse than facing death on the battlefield to die on some unnamed hill in some unnamed land? And then I began to realize, well, yeah, that's a possibility, but there's another possibility that you may survive, that you may learn from that experience. If you're not here to learn, okay, so be it. But if you are here, you gain wisdom by being in the military. And that, I think, is a positive thing.
We were talking about UFOs and alien life at the start of this conversation. And one of the questions that's adjacent to it is, if alien life were to come here at some point, do you think they would have empathy for us? Or do you think that's potentially a human trait? Do you think they, because in the movies, they attack us?
Well, if I were to shoot in the dark, I'd say, first of all, they're robotic. They're not organic at all.
Really?
Because they exhibit maneuvers that would crush the bones of any living creature that we know of. These flying saucers can zigzag. They can dive from 70,000 feet all the way down. They can dive underwater. These require skills and tensions and vibrations that crack any known U.S. device in half. And there they are, executing these things. Either they're fake or they're extraterrestrial. So I think that they have a technology that we can only dream of.
So when we're looking at these UAP images and videos, if they are to be real, then you're saying there's no life in them at all, and it's actually just machine intelligence?
That's right. In fact, that's probably one reason why they don't come out and greet us like in the movies. In the movies, they always come out and say, "Hello, Earth man." No, I personally think they're robotic.
This question of empathy, do you posit that they might be empathetic? Do you posit they would want to destroy us? I mean, what would...
Will they destroy us or will they want to? The answer, I think, is no, because they could have done go. You realize that if you go back even next to a UFO, if you take a look at Ezekiel saw the wheel in the sky. And some people say that was no wheel, that was a UFO. So who knows for sure? But if the aliens really wanted to destroy us, they've done it years ago. They don't have to wait. But if you go to a zoo, even if the zoo is lifelike to the point where the animals themselves don't even know they're in a zoo, it's peaceful. That you can observe them without necessarily revealing your presence. And in that sense, it could be like living in a zoo. Not that they want to gawk at us and laugh at us, but just observe us.
So you think that they won't want to destroy us, which is comforting to hear.
I think if they had the chance to destroy us and they wanted to, they could have done it decades ago. Sure.
It's an interesting idea. When you talked about this extraterrestrial life potentially being robotic, it kind of makes sense to... We're on a course to create humanoid robots and robots that can... I was actually watching this morning, there's a video that one of these humanoid robot streaming, and they're streaming a humanoid robot working on a production line for 4 hours everybody can watch. And all it's doing is sorting packages out. But it's been going for 4 days straight. And if you play this forward, you go, this robot can go walk across the office and it can charge itself back up once it runs out of battery. And then they show it going back to work again. What I mean, imagine this technology continues to improve on the trajectory it's on. The battery technology gets better, the intelligence gets better. And then theoretically, this robot will be able to build a spaceship, theoretically, into the universe, theoretically, at some point. If you imagine any rate of improvement. So it's theoretical that, okay, humans might not be able to survive the crushing forces of that speed, but a robot could.
My personal attitude is that we should eventually merge with them.
Merge with the robots.
That's right. My personal feeling, because people talk about whether they're good, whether they're bad, so on and so forth. Well, the bottom line is they're going to become more powerful. And not now, but who knows, maybe in the next century, they'll begin to make reasonable choices. They'll reason. They'll plot future histories. And at that point, they could be potentially dangerous. So what do? Either we become super powerful and meet the challenge, or we merge with them.
When you say merge with them, what do you mean?
Become like that, become part robotic ourselves, become superhuman.
As in, when we're born as kids, maybe we have an implant and it turns us into a robot, or?
Yeah, in other words, we are still looking the same, except and our brain is connected either directly or by remote control to a central nervous system that does the calculations, performs these calculations much better than we can, and we become superhuman.
This is the video that I'm talking about. This is actually a live video. So this is live as we're watching.
Mm-hmm.
What they've got is they've got a human being here who's sorting the packages, and they've got the humanoid robot here, and they're just counting how many packages each of them can sort. It's been doing this for 4 days straight.
Yeah.
Anyway, you play, and it asks a big question about the future of humanity when there's humanoid robots that...
Well, I think menial jobs will go out the window like this, jobs that are repetitive, jobs that just require your arms and legs Those jobs will be gradually phased out, and new jobs will open up. New jobs that require thinking, human relations, organizing, directing other people. Robots can't do any of that stuff. Robots simply do what they're told to do repetitively. Okay? We make decisions. We know how to interface with other things. We plot. We plan. Robots can't do that. Now, that doesn't mean they can't eventually, but it just means that the next step is will be robots that can do a little bit of mental work, and it means that we have to retrain the workforce so that they can become masters of the robots. In other words, we are masters of tools, hammers, saws, whatever. We're the master of them. They're not the master of us, okay? We tell the hammer and the chisel what to do because we lord over them.
Have you used AI agents before?
I've used AI before, but not necessarily. Which AI are you talking about?
So I've got on my phone, I can say, I need a new umbrella for my patio outside my house.
Yeah.
And it'll go on the internet, it'll look at the prices, it'll look at everything.
Yeah, you can just type on the computer screen a question and the computer will come up with an answer.
But you were talking about planning there. So I was saying that agent basically makes a plan and then it could spend an hour executing that plan.
Oh, you're coming up with the plan, but actually executing the plan.
Yeah. It can do both. But I'm just talking about humans have this, this ability to make decisions. I'm saying that the AI agent is making decisions
No, you tell it what to do. The computer is probably to look like an encyclopedia, a handbook, the internet. In other words, if you say, I want to know the best car, it'll carry that out by looking at the internet, going through different cars. It doesn't need you to tell it that. But if you were to ask something more complicated, go to the supermarket and buy me some eggs. No robot can do that.
Have you been to LA? Because if you're in LA, there's all these robots just strolling around the streets delivering food. They deliver food in LA.
Oh, yeah, but that's just crawling on a sidewalk.
That's what humans do.
I thought you meant driving a car and going up the stairs and whatever. That's just going on a sidewalk.
Which is what a human does.
Yeah, but do a lot more.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate your time today. And I've learned so much about all of these fascinating things. And as always, when I watch your content, I find myself more about the nature of reality. And I've realized how little we know, which makes me, and I guess thousands of other people that have followed your work. I was going through your videos earlier on, and so many of the top comments are people saying that you're the reason they worked harder in their physics classes.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I was on a couple of the podcasts that you've been on, and so many of the top comments say exactly that. They say, you're the reason I worked harder. You're the person I'm more curious. And I just think that's such a wonderful thing because as you said at the start, physics is the basis of everything.
Yeah.
And the more we understand, the better the lives we could live.
Right. Yeah, I agree.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Well, thank you.
YouTube have this new crazy algorithm where what video you would like to watch next based on AI and your viewing behavior. And the algorithm's that this video is the perfect video for you. It's different for everybody looking right now. Check this video out, and I bet you might love it.